Hi, everyone. I am Rick Barron, your host, and welcome to my podcast, That's Life, I Swear. My guest today is Julieta Duvall. She is a self-described time advocate who redefines time as a resource, not a commodity. Drawing from her aviation career and experience as a unschooling mom, she's learned to let go of obligations misaligned with her values. Her family's motto, no commitments, just experiments, and we'll get into that. We'll discuss the art of letting go, experimenting with what truly matters, and living on your own terms. Join me as I have my conversation with Julieta Duvall. Julieta, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Me too.
Gosh. So if you would, could you just kind of do a broad brushstroke per se of your background and let the audience know who you are and what you've been doing in life?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Julieta. I grew up in Mexico and I moved to Michigan when I was roughly about 19 to 20 years old. And then I worked at a community center at the pool, and it was such a fun job because I laughed every day. And I never realized how important that is. And then through life, I got a job at an airline. I was the only Spanish speaker on the midnight shift, right? So I would, whenever you called and you pushed two for Spanish, I would answer the phone call and I would make the reservations. And that started my career in aviation. I became a flight attendant and I now have been flying for 20 years. I went back to school during my aviation career. I got a bachelor's degree because I thought I wanted to leave aviation, but it turns out I didn't because I value flexibility, which really came about during COVID when we started homeschooling and quickly transitioned into unschooling. So, in a nutshell, that's it. 20 years in aviation. Never really had a regular 9 to 5 job. And I have enjoyed life in a very different way ever since.
Okay, that's great. Now, our topic today is wide open because I started doing research on being a time advocate. And then
Hmm.
one thing led to another. I thought, well, this is a conversation that probably go on for several hours. But for the audience, perhaps if you could define the term time advocate, how did you get into this? What was the pull into, I guess, embracing this this topic, if you will?
Yes, it's such a big answer. It's such a great question and a big answer. But in the short version of it, it really started when we transitioned into traditional homeschooling. When I first started in this journey back in 2020, I spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to do all the things. I was signing up for all the co-ops that I could for my kids. My kids are now 11 and 5. Back then they were 6 and like 2, and I signed up for all the things, all the events, all the classes, everything. I wanted to make sure that we were not missing anything. But that what we were missing and letting go was our sanity. So
Mm,
at that point, I had to pull back and I basically like canceled all of those commitments and really started to evaluating what each commitment brought back to our family. Like because we were investing time and money into it, but the what we were getting from that commitment was really adding to our family life. And that's when I really started valuing our time and making sure that the commitments, the return on investment, your ROI on our energy and our money, that was really equal. We were giving something to someone by, paying for our activities or being there and supporting them. But I wanted to make sure that we were also fulfilled and satisfied at the end of that experience. And it was a very kind of slow process in the sense of I wanted to do it all. And I was like, you can do a lot of things, but you cannot do all of them. So I wanted to make sure I started really pinpointing which ones were giving us something, how we felt afterwards. And I would do a check-in with myself. I'm like, so it took us an hour to prepare. We drove for 30 minutes. How was the experience? Was it worth it for everyone? And if that was a quick yes, I would save that. And then I would make sure that the next time that we went, I remember, I'm like, okay, this was a good experience, so we can do it again. And that's kind of how we live our life. I do an ROI on every activity nowadays.
So when you started doing this, you said you were signing up for everything.
Yes.
Was it for the benefit of your children that you did this, or was it a combination of both?
That is so fascinating that you mentioned that. I was working from an external input. I was working from the point of view that I wanted to be seen as a good homeschool mom. I wanted to be seen as a good parent because that is what I'm supposed to be. And don't get me wrong, I always try to be a good parent, but I really was doing my work and choosing our activities to make sure that I fit that model of society that's saying, oh, she's a good parent because she does all the things. And then I started realizing that the people that I was trying to please, A, they didn't know me, and B, I didn't know them. So, and I wasn't getting anything from them, but just this imaginary version of, oh, you're a great parent, Julieta. You're such a good mom because you do all the things. So in that moment, I shifted a little bit to make sure that we were feeling okay from an internal, a sacral response. Like if it felt good for me, it would also feel good for the rest of my family. And I started shifting to, I needed to make sure that my kids were okay and that I was okay doing all the things, regardless whether people thought I was good or bad, which I hope they don't, because I really, I was, I was really working from external input. And I had to shift to make sure to redefine what I thought was good, how we see our values, what our values were, and build that foundation. And from that foundation now, that's kind of where we work from nowadays.
Yeah, I think from the external prism, if you will, you felt like perhaps sometimes you were in the spotlight, so to speak.
Yes.
And I think in some degree, I think that people who may look at what you were doing thinking, oh, she's not a good mom.
Yes.
But they don't understand what your world entails versus what their world entails.
Yes. Yes.
So when you would go back and do a sanity check, if you will, if this was a good investment, from your experience, what did you find? Was it the kids that would say, I'm not getting anything out of this? Or was it a combination of you, or who was giving the most, direction to tell you, if my kids say they don't like it, I'm going to have to make some adjustments here?
I think it was mostly how we were able to move within the activity. So in the homeschool world, there's a lot of activities that have a specific outcome. And I think in overall, all activities, not just the homeschool world, but if it was a specific outcome and then we weren't able to explore other options. For example, my biggest example is we took a trip to Belize. In the homeschool world, there's something that's called world schooling, and that's people that travel and we experiment through the world. And in this world schooling hub in Belize, we had different activities, and we had an activity that was super cool. We were able to experience the Garifuna kitchen, which is part of their culture. And a beautiful lady showed us how to do a fish soup. We mashed the plantains, we broke the coconuts, we made it, we built the soup how it was, and then they cooked it, and then we ate it. But within this experience, not everyone was interested in smashing the plantains, and not everyone was interested in doing the coconuts. And for us, at least for my family, I really value the ability to move easier within that flow. Like if my kids weren't interested in the coconut right away, that they were able to feel free to say, you know what, I think I want to do the plantains right now. Can I come back to the coconut? And everyone being okay with that. And I really value that experience. So whenever we were able to move in and out of how we were interested in enjoying that particular experience, to me, that felt good. And to us, that was worth it because we got what we needed in that moment. We weren't pushed to do something that we weren't ready for. And also, we weren't kind of shame into saying, oh, you weren't ready to smash the coconut just right now, that it's not how you're supposed to do it. So we were able to have freedom to enjoy what we needed in that moment and come back if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And that is really what mastery came up for us, because you come back to that same experience, maybe with something else that you learned from smashing the plantains before the coconuts or something. So that really is ability to flow as you need to and on your own timeline. That's really my marker. If we have that ability, to me, that is a space that we are that is worth it for us to go back to.
Yeah. So from what you just described, I guess there's a lot of lessons that can be learned there. And I think the one that kind of stuck out the most to me was when, a mistake was made. And I think you want to instill in your children that life will never be perfect. There are going to be those moments where things are going just super. And then there are going to be those moments where, why do I feel I need to hide now because I made a mistake? It's okay to make a mistake. And sometimes when you make a mistake, you learn more from that experience.
Yes.
And I think that's what some people miss. Now, when it comes to unschooling, is there a certain grade level where, okay, well, and I'm just picking out of thin air here, from the 5th grade to the 10th grade, and then when you reach high school, and then you go into the real world, so to speak, you're going to go to a real high school. Is there a beginning or an end, or how does this work?
It's a great yes, it's such a good question. It really is, though, because unschooling, technically, like the definition of it is just technically life without school, if you want to break it down to its bare bones. And it came out in the 70s because a gentleman by the name of John Holt, he was an educator. So he just noticed that kids learn differently when they were given the ability to explore on its own terms. So he just came to the term without school and the rigidity of curriculum, by grade levels. The way I see it also, it's also freedom of education, and it's not linear. So it's really, when you have first, second, third, fourth grade, and there's like this linear aspect of the curriculum as far as like language arts and math, the way we see it is non-linear, but it is included within the life that we live. So when we go to the grocery store, we have the best time because we go at night. We go at night, usually around 7 p.m. And then we go through the aisles. It's usually best to have a list. I like to have a list to go to the grocery store, but this is an experience that we all enjoy. So we go through the aisles. We kind of already know what we need. And then we look at the prices. We look at the ingredients, we look at the grams. So all of those lessons are included in that experience, but they are from different grade levels, you could say. Some of them are from high school, some of them are from first grade, and some of them are from 5th grade. So it's really life in that experience and all of them. But there are different goals, and that's based on the different families' needs. So some people really want to do the college experience. So then at that point, you work with your child to see how you can get there and how you can facilitate that so they can have the most chances of success. And like you said, it really is about building up, not necessarily by saying, oh, you made a mistake, but rather what was learned from that, and then use that as a foundation to go up to the next level. And at that point, there's like, and I think some of the biggest things that we use in real life have come from mistakes, like crazy glue. I think it came from, it was used to do surgeries first, I think. And then it got used to, glue other things. So things do happen from the mistakes, but when we learn to embrace them and not really feel shameful about them, then it takes us on to the next level. So unschooling really is very individualized. And it's sometimes a lot of work because what we can facilitate as a family, it may not be available. So there's a lot of search, finding the right people, but it is just really a journey of experiencing and finding out what works for you and for your family.
So for the unschooling process, and again, I don't know that much about that world, so I'm asking some questions that maybe are obvious, but is there like a certification type of issuing, if you will? Like, let's say, for example, your children go from the unschooling process up to high school, and they say, okay, now I want to go to high school. Could the high school come back and say, well, you did unschooling, that doesn't qualify for you to get into high school now? Or even say you went up even through high school. Could a college administration say, well, I know you did the unschooling, but for our curriculum, that doesn't fit in, so you can't come into this school?
Yeah, it really is. So unschooling is technically, the bigger term is homeschooling, and then unschooling is just a way of homeschooling. But within the unschoolings, you're still bound by the laws of homeschooling, which from whatever state you're in. So even for example, the state of Pennsylvania needs you to register and to work with like not a social worker, but rather someone that that kind of knows your process. So within the unschooling lifestyle and way of education, you still get to meet all the requirements of teaching reading, science, history, all of the required subjects, but you just get to do them in a different way. And then, you follow the requirements from your homeschool state as to how you can get a high school diploma, and the college that you want to go to also have different requirements for homeschool students. So you technically really fall under the homeschooling umbrella, but we just do it a little bit different. But there are always options for sure.
Okay. So, thank you. So is the standard ubiquitous across the United States, or does each state have a certain set of rules?
Yes. No, every state has its own set of rules. There are some states that are easier to homeschool, and there are some states that have a little more requirements or they have registration. So the first question whenever someone wants to transition into home education, alternative, home education, it is to know the state that you're in, because truancy, if you just stop attending school and you don't show up, there are legal aspects to it all. So we are still working within the legal system and the boundaries of the state that people live in, for sure. Yes, that's always important to know.
Good. Now, did you start this process with your children immediately, or did you have them go to a regular school and then say, okay, we're going to take a different route now, we're going to do the unschooling process?
Yes, they did start it in school, actually. My oldest son spent about close to 4 years at a Montessori school. And I think I felt like I always lean more towards the self-directed education. And that's why we went with a Montessori setup, because we like the idea of, Maria Montessori used to say, what the hand do, the mind remembers, and something like that. So we always like that idea of a more nature involved way of education, learning from nature, real life skills and all of that. And during COVID, really, we went into the pandemic with online school, but my son was really young. He was finishing up kindergarten and going into first grade. So expecting a person that needs a lot of movement to sit in the computer and to do all the work just didn't feel fair for him. And I was always excited about the idea of homeschooling and world schooling, which is traveling with them and learning from experience. And, I picture myself going to the Colosseum and eating gelato and talking about the Roman Empire. I had all these visions, but I truly was a little scared to go against the mainstream of just going to school and doing all the things, the sports, all the activities. And we did that, prior to 2020. My son was in Chinese classes from the time he was 10 months old. I was the full definition of a tiger mom. Yes. Yes. It's been a long journey. It's been a long journey, but I was the full definition of a tiger mom. And then 2020 gave us a different perspective. And I pulled my career in aviation as to living in a different way, and then kind of mix that with like homeschooling, unschooling, and kind of how we got to this point. So it's been a pretty fun journey. Not always easy, but good.
Oh, I can imagine. In the time that you've been taking this journey, as you put it, what have you learned about yourself in going through this process? Like, never would have thought I would do this, but having gone through this process, these are some things I've learned that I didn't think I knew, but I have educated myself to something that I never would have thought would cross my path.
There are so many questions and so many answers to that. But I think one of the biggest one is that I learned to trust my children. And I learned that I could also be trusted when I was a child, and that my parents did the best they could with what they had. It's so deep sometimes because there has been a lot of healing in the last couple of years. It all started, our homeschooling journey started, it was rough because I had a specific idea of what it was supposed to be. And I did not take my child into consideration whether he wanted to do math at 11 o'clock in the morning. I just said, this is the way it's supposed to go, and this is what we're going to do. And it didn't feel right because I wasn't trusting myself and I wasn't trusting him, but I didn't know how else to do it. And I started seeking resources, and that's when I came to human design. And I found out that I could also trust myself, that my intuition and what my body was telling me, that I could follow that, and that I was able to pivot, that I could give myself the permission to pivot if it didn't feel right anymore. And that I could also extend that grace to my children for them to say, you know what? I don't think I don't think I want to go to do karate anymore, martial arts. My son has been in martial arts since he was 3 years old. He's 11.
Wow.
Now. And he finally said, I think I'm ready to take a break. I'm going to concentrate on parkour, which is a different activity, but still kind of falls under like a little bit like martial arts. And I never really thought I could say, yeah, okay, let's give that a try and let's see how that works. I think in a different world, I would have said, absolutely not. You must continue and follow your journey until you achieve your black belt, and then you can pivot, which is something that my mom would say. She would always say, like, you have to finish this. The ability to pivot when things are not fully done was a big one. I never thought I could give myself permission because it gave me so much grief over my lifetime I felt guilty all the time for not finishing up certain projects. And nowadays I'm like, oh, this is so good. I think I got what I needed out of the project and I am ready to pivot. And giving myself that permission and extending that to my children has been the biggest growth that I have seen so far since our journey began.
To stop half stream, you would then never know what could have been had you stuck it out. Mm-hmm. When you went into unschooling, and did you have any resources that you can go to for people to say, okay, you want to do unschooling. Okay, here's how the process works. Here's what you might expect to see happen. Or was this just something you just dove into right away on your own?
There were a lot of resources, or maybe they were not available to me. Like I didn't know they existed. And a friend of mine, she suggested when I told her my vision of world schooling, my Italian vision of being in Rome, she said, oh, you want to do world schooling? I said, what? Does that has a name? And she's like, yeah. So she recommended the book by Julie Bogart, oh my goodness, I lost the name. Something Learner. I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna send it to you so it can be added. The Brave Learner, that's what it's called. The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart. It's a great book, and she explains the different types of how to do home education. And in there, she put self-directed education or unschooling. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is how I want to do life with my children. I want to be in partnership with them. I didn't want to be fighting this control, this power person over them because it's their life. Ultimately, I learned not to recreate like what wasn't given to me, I was trying to give to them. And I wasn't really taking into consideration that they are their own person. They didn't grow up with me. They didn't need what I needed. So it's just very different. But The Brave Learner was a great starting point. And then I went on to different authors like John Holt, Peter Gray. I went on to different people like Dana Martin. And it is worth noting that the way I learn best is from people. Like I can tell you that I've learned many different things from different people. And the philosophy of unschooling, it's very, it's good, but I had a hard time putting it into practicality, how to bring it into life, how to trust my children, because on the day-to-day life, it was very chaotic. I'm like, how am I supposed to do this without feeling like I'm supposed to, take control over this household? And that's when my work in human design came about a little bit, and that kind of helped me put it all together. But there are a lot of resources. I feel like home education, alternative home education, has a pre-COVID area and the post-COVID area, which is where we are now. So many people are doing amazing work on sharing with people that it's okay to do it differently, and it's okay to trust yourself and trust your children. And it's so pretty cool seeing that, though. The transformation that happens within the lives of families is pretty cool.
Oh, that's great to hear. I want to go back to the introduction where it called out about your family motto: no commitments, just experiments. Can you expand on that? How did this come about? I mean, I love that.
Yes, it was such a beautiful moment when I finally allowed myself to pivot. And really that it is no commitments. It's just the experiment of what we're doing right now, and then there's the learning that comes from it. And is there a next step that we could go to? Do we want to go into the next step? And if the answer is no, there is no shame. There is no guilt for saying, no, that isn't what we want to do right now. And then we just move on to the next step. It's a little hard sometimes because we have been, the narrative is that you have to push through all of the good and the bad if you want to succeed. And that could be right? Like if you're an athlete, there are going to be bad days where you are either hurt or in pain or too hungry or just too tired and too sleepy. But overall, the goal, the desire for you to accomplish something is going to carry you through those days. But sometimes you have activities that truly in your gut, in your stomach, like in the most primal instinct that we have as human beings, that's saying this is not for you. And to listen to that and to allow yourself to pivot, that has been the biggest thing for us. So it really started as a permission to myself to pivot as a person, because whenever I would talk to people at work, they're like, "Oh, Julieta, what are you into right now?" And I would say something, and I know I have a lot of stuff going on, but they all relate in one way or another. But people I would tell them what was happening in my life, and they're like, "I'm just exhausted by listening to you, woman. Like, I just don't even know how you do it." And I'm like, "Well, I just do." But what I have learned is that whenever I'm excited about a project, it really expands my energy to go ahead and do something else that relates to it and adds to it. So the no commitment, just experiments, it really is just about that, to making sure that whatever is on my plate makes me excited and everyone is excited about it. And at the end of the day, that we feel satisfied with how the day went. And that is just such a beautiful feeling, because I really think that's how everyone should go. Whenever you go to bed, you're like, oh my goodness, I had the best day. And you just cannot wait for the one that's coming after that. So
I guess this kind of goes back then to the title itself, being a time advocate.
yes.
Having quality of time,
Mhm.
but also enjoying that quality of time.
Yes.
Because my wife and I have done numerous things that one day we did various, I don't know, tasks, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the day, I thought, wow, we're doing this and we're doing this. And at the end of the day, I look back on what we had accomplished and I thought, you know what? Throughout all of this one moment, I was having a lot of fun.
Yes.
It was just very spontaneous.
Yes.
It wasn't like, oh gosh, now I got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one thing fell into another. So I guess for me, I'm getting a better sense now when you say time advocate. Now, there was a term that we had discussed when we first met. It was called deconditioning from external input.
Yes.
Fascinating term.
Mm-hmm.
What does that entail? What does that mean?
For how I have used it is that I put all the sentences, they say, you should be doing X, Y, or Z. You should be X, Y, or Z. And then I was pondering on it. Should I be doing X, Y, or Z? Let me see if I can think of a quick example here. The school system, really, going back to that, or perhaps my 9 to 5. Should I have a 9 to 5 job, for example? Should my kids go to school? And the answer is not coming from the answer from the outside world would be probably yes. It depends who you talk to. Sure, you should have a 9 to 5 because it gives you a routine. Your kids should go to school because they learn something. So, but then what I turn it into for the deconditioning aspect of it's like, what works for us? What works? How do we learn? Is my child a better will my child benefit from being in the school? And some people do, actually. I happen to be one of those people. I benefit a lot from structure, but some people are meant to be more in the flow. So what I think what people think I should be doing, I just ask myself, is that true for myself? Should my children be in school? Is that the best thing for them? And that really is what it's all about. Is that the best thing for me? Should I have a 9 to 5? And the answer truly is no. For me, it is an absolutely no. Because I have lived in a world that I have very long days, but I also have a lot of flexibility. So to me, my value of flexibility does not answer to that you should have a 9 to 5. That doesn't work for me. So now I take all of that. When I think we should be doing something, I stop for a second and I think to myself, so why is it that I'm taking that in? And is that really true for us? Does that add to our value of using our time together as a family in the best way possible? Is that true? And then if it doesn't, I really just go down the rabbit hole of going backwards. I really take it down now to my childhood, to the way I experienced life in Mexico and what my parents said I should be doing, which was go to school, get a good career, find a stable job, value stability, which I do. But I'm like, my parents' advice came from their own experience and I just took it, right? I didn't know any better. So I just took it and I ran with it. And then I was applying that also to my child. And that's how I became the tiger mom in my own terms, because I was taking that from somebody else. And now I'm like, is that the kind of mom that I want to be? And the answer, most of it, sometimes is no, sometimes is yes, but maybe it's like from a different angle. But what I want to connect with my children, and I want us to form our values from our own experience and what feels good to us, from the most instinct, from your body reaction. Like if you have a steak, you're like, yes, that feels so good, then that's what I want to be doing, right? Because that keeps me happy. It makes me happy. It makes me a better person. And honestly, my days, I have to have like 3 hours of creative work before I wake up, before everyone else. to be able to do that, because I know that that makes me a better human being. Believe me, it makes me a better human being when I am satisfied. And the deconditioning that we have to go through as to learning takes 8 hours a day, and you still have to do all the homework and all the after school activities. It's just thinking about, is that really true? Does that really work for you? And if it doesn't, then you get to reframe your own values, and then you go from there, right? And it's okay if they work for somebody else, and it's okay if those ones work for you at that point too. It's just making sure that you are pondering onto, okay, this is what people say I should believe. And do I believe that? Do I want to continue on that belief? And the answer is yes, that's okay. It's all good. It's just making sure that it comes from you and not from somebody else.
Right. I mean, a couple of points. Like you, I love getting up early in the morning because for me, that's kind of a quiet time, my own little cubbyhole, so to speak, of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the mornings. So it gives me time to, read my book. I mean, I love reading.
Mm-hmm.
But you had a good thought there about the value of time for yourself, because I know working in high tech, my wife did very well. And she got to a point where she became a senior director.
Mm-hmm.
And I once asked her, did you ever think maybe wanting to be a VP? I said, and she looked at me and said, look at the time I spent being a senior director. You see me take trips
Mm-hmm.
almost like every other week. You see me bringing work home almost every night. If I was a VP, she said, you probably wouldn't even see me.
Yes.
Is that what you want? I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, no. Is it? And she said, look, to me, having a good salary so we could have a good life is great, but not to the point of sacrificing the valuable time we could have with one another. It's just
Your
not
whole
worth
life.
it.
Yes.
Because she had seen so many people take that route
Mm-hmm.
only to, fall on their face. It's like, gosh, I didn't expect it was going to be like this, where my time was just, I don't have time, So,
and that is and that is so beautiful, because she knew, from her own values, what she valued, which is spend the time with you. And she knew that she didn't want to go there. And that was okay for her. Other people might have said, oh yeah, I think I want to do that. And then maybe gotten to that point and said, you know what, I don't think this is what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and give myself the permission to pivot. But those are different, but they both come from that internal knowing of what's important to you. And it also, highlights how everyone values different things, and none of them are better or worse. It's just what matters to you. And that is just so beautiful to have that awareness, because then you're working, you're seeking, you're doing your life according to what matters to you and what makes you happy. And ultimately, I think that's what this life is all about. You should be happy.
Yeah, it really comes down to that. I think people are always in such a rush
Mm-hmm.
to get from here to here, and it's like you got to slow down,
Yes.
And I mean, my wife and I are both retired now, but I find myself busier than I was when I was working. So
Yes.
I really enjoy it. So very briefly, going back to the unschooling, have you seen a difference in your children and how they are looking at, I don't know, life, if you will? I mean, do you see a difference if, like, had they gone to regular school versus what you're doing? Have you detected a difference in their demeanor, their attitudes, their outlook on life?
Yes. I do actually. I do. And it's very unique in the sense that they are not afraid to speak their needs. And I really value that. They are very in tune with their bodies, and it's something that we continue to work on. Like, when you want to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. It's a very in tune. When you're hungry, you eat. I don't have restrictions on food as far as like what they can or cannot have. What's in the house is always available for everyone at any time of the day. And that I took from aviation, right? In aviation industry, my flights could be in different time zones. So I was always in different countries. I always had to eat whenever I could find food. So I learned to almost disassociate from my body per se, because I knew that if I didn't eat in that particular moment, it would be 7 hours before I could eat again. So even though I wasn't hungry, I made myself eat because I knew what was, coming, that I had to work or whatever. So uh, and then I would eat breakfast when it was like lunchtime. I would eat dinner when it was breakfast. It was just because I was always in different time zones. So that really wasn't hard for me. So I never really been like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I know that's difficult for some people sometimes. But really, the connection that I see with our bodies is really, really beautiful for them to be able to say, I am tired and I'm just going to walk myself to bed, do brush my teeth, do my nightly routine and go to bed. It is really, really valuable. It makes me happy to see that their connection is like, it's there, because I had so many stomach issues from being in the industry, from not being connected to my body. And as we connect with our body, then we are easier. It's easier for us to learn when we are in full alignment with our body, right? So that is one thing that I noticed the most. My oldest yesterday, I was going on a tangent about, we check in. So I do like quarterly check-ins with them. Like, so this is what we're doing. He now wants to go back to horseback riding, so we're in the process of searching for a person and all that stuff. But I said, I just want you to know that, if you're not happy, with this life, I can always, we can always look for different ways. Is it something that you want to do? And he's like, Mommy, what you have is anxiety. And I was like, yes, fear of the future, So I love that they have the ability to be open and to say what's in their mind, because they're actually pretty wise. If you really have a conversation with a child, they have the most beautiful outlook on life. And they have, in the past, I wrote a post that their kids are greatest cosmic teachers. They are so beautiful. And whenever I talk to a passenger that's a child, they are so cool. They are the coolest tiny humans. And my children have the ability to speak their mind without feeling like they have to. It's just, they are just part of the conversation, and they are part of this family, and they are their decision or their thoughts are also part in the decision making of our family. Like, whenever we choose a trip, whenever we go somewhere, everyone's in the decision making process. It doesn't always meet everyone's needs sometimes, but that is part of being within a community. People's needs are different, so sometimes someone's needs get met later than some of them are met sooner than later, but we all work together. And that is, I think that's some of the things that I see in them. Their ability to say, I want to learn this and research. And then I come in and I'm like, okay, what else can we do? These are the choices. Do you want to hire a tutor? Like I said, my son took Chinese classes since he was 10 months old. Like I said, I was a tiger mom, so here I am. But now he's saying, I think I want to take Chinese again. He downloaded Duolingo on his own, and he started going through the app. And I said, well, Duolingo is great, but I used it for Italian and Portuguese. And I'm like, there were some mistakes, so let's just be careful. Would you like to hire a tutor? Would you like me to find you a class? He's like, let me think about it. I said, okay, well, on a scale from 1 to 10, where is the need for a tutor at this point? He said a 5. I said, okay, so let me look and let me find some resources for you, and then we'll go from there. He's like, okay, that sounds good. So it's really is this communication process, this journey of finding out what works for you. And to me, that is the most beautiful thing, because as a parent, we feel the burden of wanting to do everything for a child, for our children, but often without taking them into consideration as to how they need some things done. So I'm doing the heavy lifting, right? I'm doing the work of the adult. I'm the one paying. I'm the one making the appointments. I'm the one figuring out the schedule, but I'm really just facilitating what they need in that moment. And having him telling me my need of a tutor right now, it's a 5, then I kind of know what my timeline is. If he would have told me, oh, I'm ready to go to China and, do whatever, I'm like, okay, well, that would probably have to wait. Like, we're just not there yet. But let me find out how I can get there. And yeah, I think that's really cool. I
No,
mean,
I think children are so perceptive, curious, and their lives have not been tarnished by real life. So
yes.
they have a lot of innocence in them. And yeah, very briefly, we had a family that lived next door to us, and mother and father with 4 girls. And we have a pool. So as they were getting older, we let them come over to learn how to swim.
Yes.
And the oldest one was always reading a book. And she was always asking me questions about, things in general. And one day in our newspaper, there was this big puzzle of trying to find all the various types of animals.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the page over to their house, knocked on the door. Their mother answered. And I said, look, I have this puzzle that I'd like to have your daughter figure out. If she can find all the animals on this page, I'll make her pool tickets so she can come over during the summer and use the pool anytime she wants. And she smiled and said, okay, I think she'll like this. And about 3 hours go by. I hear a knock at the door. I open the door, and there's the neighbor's daughter. I did it. So immediately I had to make the tickets on my computer. I gave her the tickets. I said, here you go. And then one hot July, she came over with her sisters. They each had the ticket.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Yes, they're super cool, though. Kids are super cool, though. And they have so much to teach us.
They're a lot smarter than we think they are.
That we give them credit for. Yes, indeed. So
tell me about the power of experimentation. I thought that was kind of a neat term that you called out to me.
Yeah, I mean, the power of experimentation, I think it again goes back to my multi-passionate energy and my healing really from not feeling guilty from wanting to try different things. I really think there's a lot of good that comes out from trying things and to recognizing when something fails, not for the failure per se, but rather for the learning. And to experiment with new things, it allows us to see if we like it or not, and if we want to move forward or not, and I think there's just so much value in that. Like I said, like just a couple of days ago when we talked about my podcast, that a version that the audio didn't come out really well. I mean, it was a really, really powerful experience for me to know that I need to experiment a little bit more with sound and to be better at it. And that was that, but it was a learning experience, right? And I was like, okay, I didn't go into off the deep end like I normally would in the past, thinking that was the end of it. But it was just, it's just nice for us to see that and to allow for that for our children to experiment too. In our house, my youngest son, he's all into science and he's I have jars of jars and jars of things, I have wood that apparently are new species of wood that are coming out, and we have corners of crystals, and we have a turtle that was hatching, and he created the ecosystem for the turtle, and it was a fake turtle. It's from one of those eggs they just put in water, but he watched it. He has a fish tank and the experimentation that has been through that, because we have gone through about 7 or 8 fish at this point. Yes, they are. I knew nothing about fish before. And we started this journey about, I don't know, close to a year ago. But the first one died within a day or two. and he had named them. So he went through the loss of his fish. And then the second fish, he named them Nothing, he said, because I'm afraid, yes, his name was Nothing because he was afraid that he was going to die and he didn't want to be attached. So it was so interesting that he felt how he felt the loss of the first one and realized how it hurt and didn't want to be attached to the second one. So we experimented with the second one. We buried them, and then we got a tank, a little one, then we got a bigger one. But without that model of experimentation and support, I don't know that we would have made it this far. He's 5, almost 6, and he wakes up, comes down the stairs, and the first thing he does is it turns the light on for his fish. He feeds them, and he says good morning, and then he goes on to his day. But it is in him to do that, right? I do not remember to feed fish. I mean, I barely remember what I did yesterday, right? So I don't have to go after him and say, did you feed the fish? Or I'm not going to do this because I don't want to take care of him. He does all of it, along with my husband, who's been really, really good about learning and helping him clean the tank, because they're a lot of work. I never knew how involved a fish tank is. So this experimentation process, it is just allow us to go into the next step. And so much of it, we want to be good at the first time. And if we're not good, then we're moved away from it. We're like, oh, we're just not good, so we're just going to move away from it. And there's so much value on the other side, right? Like if something doesn't come out right, you learn something and then you move on to the next step. So we just kind of go like that. Oh, this didn't work. Let's just think about why it didn't work. And do we want to make it better for next time? Or are we ready to move on to the next step or to another thing? And it's okay if it's, if people are done with whatever they're doing, then that's okay. It's not a big deal. We're just going to move and experiment. All of it, everything is an experiment every day.
I hear that. Mm-hmm. So being a time advocate, is it something that is more applicable to if you have a family or if you're just a couple or even just a single person?
Yes, it's for everybody. I am definitely a time advocate. The way I like to share it is that it is for everyone. Nowadays, a lot more people are choosing not to have children. There are quite a few studies that have come out recently about how stressful it is to be a parent. I highly agree with that. And I really think most of that has come out from the external pressures that tell us that we're supposed to do it in a certain way. And the same thing, I also see how young adults that are perhaps in their college career are going through mental breakdowns because of how the external input that their college career should be like in order for them to succeed. So I like to say that being a time advocate for myself, my family, but also for other people is for everyone. Because not because you don't have children means that your time is not important. And as you go through life, I highly recommend getting that, assessing that ROI that you have on your investment on how you spend your time. And my biggest example too is from aviation. Like over Christmas, people make the incredible investment in times of money, their time, because they have limited time because the holiday break perhaps is just a long weekend, or maybe you can add a vacation day, and then they pay for tickets to go and to see people, right? But what I tell people is like, if you don't make the effort to go and see your family that lives on the other side of the country throughout the year, because somehow you always end up in a fight or there's like, something going under the water, why is it that you think doing it over Christmas is going to make it better? So I don't like to fly the day after Christmas, the 26th, because people come to the airport, they're energetically drained. They have left everything they had whatever they were, and they have lost time, money, energy. If they had chosen to say, for example, I don't know, I'm going to just stay home and not have to do all the obligations that people feel they should be doing. So you're advocating at that point for your sanity, for your mental balance, for your happiness. Do you really need to go to 4 Christmases? Probably not. It's
Right.
hard to say no. Absolutely. It's the easiest. No. But I love doing that because it is ultimately what brings you the most peace. So go to the place that brings you the most peace, that you give peace to them, and then they give peace back to you. But it is hard though, because we get into all these shoulds, right? And people try to make us feel guilty because we don't want to be there, we don't want to see them. But internally, like deep down, we know that you just don't like to be there. So it is hard to be a time advocate for yourself sometimes, but I love if you can even just think about it for a second and be aware of that. I really think it's very, very powerful how for your life as you move forward, because your time is just extremely valuable. You can never get it back.
Oh, I know when you think about the elapse of time that goes before your very eyes, you don't really get a grasp of where you were even a year ago versus where
Yes.
you are now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, what happened between here and there? It's all gone. Now, for
Yes.
my wife, she started these phone meetings with her relatives during COVID. So we kept it going during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
But it got to a point where even after COVID was subsiding and we were kind of coming back to life, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
in the world, that she kept the conversations going because one of her relatives had said, "Are we going to have another call?" And as we kept those calls going, we found that we didn't want to lose touch with one another
Mm-hmm.
because one person had the thought about, we just lost so and so. And it's like, gee, we just talked to them last month. And you realize it, as you get older, you become more sensitive to
Yes.
knowing someone that you knew has now left this earth. They've disappeared, so to speak. They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to, at least for us, we love having these conversations. And my wife started a conversation with one of her relatives in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And that has really escalated now to where we've added more people. So I think, to your point, you want to allocate time, but allocate time that most importantly will bring you value, make you happy,
Yes.
and make you more sensitized that, what, there's more time than you realize that you have on your hand, that you can really do something
Yes.
every day, every month, every year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it could be very, I'm sure it's hard for some people. For some people, it's just not, I don't want to, allocate my time, but it's more or less, but take a shot at it and see what you think.
Yeah, I really think it's hard. And I was I was leaving the airport yesterday, and then there was an ad that said stop for nothing. I think that's what the ad said. And it was about having, headphones. And I'm like, no, it really is hard for us within a society that really calls for productivity,
Mm.
for results, and for pushing through it, and all of that. It's hard to go against it. But honestly, your body, half the time, that's when we see, or what I think about is when we see the autoimmune disorders, like your body will tell you that it is time to stop before you really come to terms that it is time to stop. The body will say enough is enough. And rest is absolutely so crucial, so crucial to have a good balance between all of it. But it really is for everyone though. I think there are times to go like super crazy on things, perhaps it's something that you're really excited about. But if it doesn't excite you, then I'll just take a moment to ponder and see, and kind of, my son would say, my oldest son, he said, you have to dig deeper. because yes,
Wow.
whenever I'll get like a little bit like, like frazzled about something, he'll say, you have to dig deeper, mommy. I say, yes, you're absolutely right. Because whatever is coming up, it's from years past. So I know I have to peel the layers on that onion of, I don't call it a trigger anymore. It's now, I can't even remember, but it's now just a pause that I know it's there for a reason because I'm about to learn something. I'm about to discover something that I went through that it no longer applies to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm growing up here. And I pat myself in the back. Good job, Julieta. You did it. But my son would say, dig deeper, mommy. And then that's really what it is. If you feel it in your body that it is a no, or there's some hesitation, the body is there to be our bodies are our partners. It's there to show us something that we don't automatically always want to see. And that is so interesting. So interesting to listen to those cues. The body is so amazing, so smart, and knows us so well.
Wow.
So yeah, super cool.
That's great. I mean, very perceptive of your son.
Yes.
Wow. A little scary.
Yes, because it will confront me. And honestly, yes. And I think if it was before 2020, I was the type of parent like my way or the highway. Like, I'm the parent, I'm the one that knows. In reality, no, I have been on this earth longer than he has, but honestly, he has a lot of wisdom. And usually when he says something, it's really right on point. I mean, it's to the point where I'm like, Anthony, do you have to be so direct? Like, is there a way that you can like cushion that for me? Because, it could be so painful to realize that I have more growth to go through. And he's like, I'm like, okay, it's okay. So yeah, it's super fun though. They're definitely my greatest teachers. And I learned a lot from them every day. And we live life together. And I'm always here to support them, whether it's in this journey of unschooling or if they want to go back to school. I'm okay either way. It's just about what's best for them. So,
well, time will tell, and you'll know, they will know.
Yes.
When that time arrives, and it could come when you least expect it, because what, your oldest is 10, 11?
He's 11, yeah.
11. I mean, before you know it, he's going to be going to college.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought. That's how quickly time goes by here.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, look at this year. It's already March,
I know.
And it feels like it was yesterday when it was, when we were, doing like Christmas stuff and all of that. So, time goes by really fast for sure. Yes.
Wow. Well, Julieta, we have covered a lot of ground here, and I got to tell you, I could keep talking with you.
Me too. Thank you.
But if you want to leave a thought, pearls of wisdom, if you will, with people who are listening, what might that be? Oh
my goodness. I'll say a few things. So first, that if we live this life to be 80 years, your days are 29,200. That's it. If you get 365 days times 80 years are 29,200 days. It's not a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, and they do go pretty fast. So enjoy every day to the fullest. And whatever dream you have, dream big, but start small. Every step accounts towards something. It doesn't matter how far-fetched you think the dream is. If you have it, if it's in your mind, and if at the end of your days, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have done, I don't know, for me, is going to Egypt and opening a bookshop one day. I know that at the end of my days, I will regret if I don't go to Egypt and open a bookshop at some point in time. I will say, I wish I would have done that. So if you think of something and you're like, I am going to regret not doing it, I think every small step that takes you to that, it's going to get you to where you want to go. Your time is so precious. Spend it with the people that you love and spend it in the activities that give you something back in return, because you can never get it back. You can never get it back.
Wow. Beautiful thought. I really appreciate that.
Thank
Well,
you.
everyone, I want to thank Julieta for taking time to have this conversation. And I call it a conversation. I don't call it a podcast interview, because it's what we love to do, is talk. And I hope you have taken what Julieta has shared with us and take a stab at it. I think you will find there's a lot of good and positive investment that I think you're going to get in return. So with that, I thank you for joining our show, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Take care.